This is Caris LeVert, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
What's up, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. And today, Facci, we've got a special guest that's premiering on this episode. Can you let the people know who it is?
He is back. It is Ted Wu, and you are going to get to know Ted today on the TED Talk. I'll go there. Look, I thought this was awesome. Ted's second time on Setting the Pace, and I felt like this time, he really kind of pulled back that curtain a bit to what it's like to be in a front office. And I thought this was a kind of different type of episode, between you and I. It wasn't so player-driven. It was more of like, tell us how this works. How does that work? What was the adjustment like with the CBA? Things like that.
No, it was really interesting. I think it was nice to kind of change the pace of how everything's going. So it was really cool for us to kind of get the, the backstory of how Ted got to where he's at. So with that being said, though, I just want to ask you if you saw all the crazy stuff that's been happening with maybe the Disney stars that were our age growing up. You got the Jonas Brothers tour, and they're bringing Demi Lovato back. Have you been seeing all this kind of reunion stuff happening?
I did see that because I had a friend who I guess attended. So
okay.
Now that I started thinking about it, I'm like, I did see something about the Jonas Brothers. One of my old college roommates just went to like a Jonas Brothers concert last night. So I guess they were in like New York or something. Amy likes Jonas Brothers. Demi Lovato, I don't think that was ever really her cup of tea.
I mean, they were in Camp Rock together, so I just didn't know if that was something that you watched. Maybe, I don't know what you watched growing up, Facci.
I was a Boy Meets World guy. Like that was really like the Disney Channel. Like I kind of missed it a little bit. I was more Nickelodeon than Disney Channel is what I'll say.
Well, Boy Meets World was not Nickelodeon.
No, it wasn't. It was TGI Friday, TGIF, whatever. Loved Boy Meets World. That's what I grew up on because I had an older brother.
Who was your favorite character in Boy Meets World? Like, did you like try to like be more like Sean, more like Corey, more like Eric?
I think my brother was more like Eric, and I guess I would be Corey in the type of thing. I don't know if that's like a main character syndrome or whatever you want to call it, but I had the older brother. So that part works out. I'm not going to say I was the coolest. Like I can't just be like, oh, I'm Sean Hunter, but I think at the same point, love that show. I think that's probably the show that I could just rewatch and rewatch and rewatch for years and years to come.
Yeah. I mean, funny you mentioned that. I just watched the entire first season over the last couple of weeks, and I've been listening to Pod Meets World.
I'd like to get into that. I would.
It's really good. I mean, they have all of the former cast on there to do interviews and things like that.
Corey, I don't know if you read into that, but he's like hardcore cut the group off to the point where, like that kind of kills it a little bit because if you had Corey involved, that's like that unlocks so much. But I don't know what his deal is. But hey, you know what?
Yeah. They've invited him on, and he just said like he's good, but like everybody else has been coming on.
Yeah. He's like the guest that everyone would love to hear from. But hey, I don't know if you guys want to hear anything about this, so we'll save you the.
Well, that's not the biggest news. Taylor Swift might be coming out with some new music as well.
Amy already said something like that. I said something.
It said something like that.
Because she said like, "What do we have going on this week?" And I said something I named a day, and she's like, "Oh, everything's going on that day." I was like what? And she's like, "Taylor Swift's dropping new music. Taylor's going on the pod with Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce, like all of that stuff." And I was like, none of that was on my radar at all. But clearly, to a lot of people, it is a big deal.
Hey, I mean, seems like a big deal to me. I mean, Taylor Swift putting out new music. It's been a minute.
It's been a bit.
So it seems like it's time, Facci. But anyway, I just knew your wife, big Taylor Swift fan. So I don't know. We have listeners of this show that are big Taylor Swift fans too.
They're everywhere. Everywhere.
I mean, I'm a Swiftie.
But I support Swifties. My wife, big time Swiftie. But what I will say, you're gonna walk away from this pod a big Ted Wu fan. That I promise you, because Ted was just bringing it. I love, like, this guy is an encyclopedia of the CBA, and we are lucky to have him on the inside of the front office because, like, this man knows his stuff. When we break down what really went into, like, the J Huff trade, it's genius. It really is, and I'm just happy.
This is such a teaser for everybody to listen to the show. How the J Huff trade came down.
I'm huffing and puffing for J Huff. But look, yes, exactly, man. But look, I just think at this point, fun interview with Ted Wu. If you guys aren't too familiar, you're gonna walk away big fans. That I guarantee.
All right, everybody, we'll be right back after this commercial break for our interview with Ted. Woo! All right, everybody, joining us now on Setting the Pace, it is the Assistant General Manager of the Indiana Pacers. It is Ted Wu. Ted, thank you so much for coming back on this show. Hope you're having a great summer. How are you doing?
We're doing great. The summer's going along, and I'm excited to get on the podcast and talk to you guys again.
Welcome back.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know a lot of times we bring you on here, talk about players, talk about the team and stuff like that, and we'll get to that eventually. But we were talking off air, and I don't think a lot of people know the story of how Ted Wu rose to become the assistant general manager of the Indiana Pacers. So I know you said it might be a little bit of a long-winded story, but I think our listeners would be really intrigued to hear how you got into the industry, how you got into the business and things like that. So can you kind of just give us the rundown of how Ted Wu became assistant GM?
Yeah. So, I guess the quick and easy is that before coming to the Pacers, I worked at the NBA league office for 8 years. And that was what broke me into working on the team side of things. But getting to the league office was not the traditional basketball path that a lot of people that now work in a front office had traditionally. So I have a accounting and marketing background. So I was working at a big four accounting firm in New York after I graduated from school. And kind of was not really feeling that job for too long, but always loved sports growing up. I was not talented enough to really break through into that industry, but love doing fantasy basketball, being on Real GM, looking at trade rumors, looking through all those things, and really diving into CBA related, kind of nuance. And it was just something that was a huge passion of mine, kind of even, during school and then after school. But never really had an idea how to even break into the sports industry. So it was one of those things that constantly every day I would be, scouring the career websites of some NBA teams and some other leagues, and thought maybe I can break into like their finance or accounting department and kind of break through there. And then one day I was on the NBA.com site. I scrolled all the way to the bottom, looked for career opportunities. This was like before LinkedIn was a real thing. I didn't know anybody at the league office. I didn't know anybody at a team. But a position in the salary cap legal department opened up for an entry level, somebody who was good with numbers, passionate about sports, knew a little bit about the CBA, but wasn't really a requirement. And I applied for it out of the blue. And, I applied for it. I told my brother I applied for it. My brother's like, yeah, you and a million other people, he was like, you're never going to get it. And then, a week later, you get the call and it's like, they want to interview you. And I remember, it's one of those moments in life where you remember exactly where you are, kind of when you get the call. You answer it, you still think, okay, wow, I got an interview with the NBA. But what is that actually going to lead to? And then every kind of I interview with them, I kind of do feel like I do pretty well with that round, get my second interview, and then next time, and then before you know it, it's they're offering you the job. And like that moment when I got that call, they're like, take the weekend to think about it. And I'm like, okay, I'll take a weekend to think about it. And then I hang up and I'm like, I'm definitely taking it. It's one of those things that, you're just jumping up and down, celebrating like this is your chance to kind of to break through into the business. And then from then on, I get my job at the league office and thinking I kind of know some stuff, but then you realize like, holy crap, there's so much more to learn and understand and do. But through time, 8 years there, I went through one collective bargaining agreement between the players and with the league office. So I was a pretty big piece of coming up with the rules of the 2017 CBA. You deal with all 30 teams at the league office, helping them with their salary cap and contract and trade questions, answering whether you can do, certain transactions and any of that stuff. And then you build your network and you get to know everybody at all 30 teams. And then you see every trade and every player contract and every waiver and every, anything that touches a team's, kind of salary cap sheets or their books, like went through our group at the league office. And it's one of those things that you become a real, kind of knowledge base, and you just really understand what's happening across the league, that made transitioning to the team side pretty, valuable and important, and something that when I was looking about my next steps, wanting to do, I wanted to find the right opportunity and the right team and the right kind of group to grow that with. But when the opportunity came in 2020, Indiana felt like the right team. I've had other overtures from other teams before that, but working with Kevin, Chad, and Kelly at the time, and understanding the ownership group, and seeing the culture that the team has brought, it felt like an easy transition. Easy is one way of putting it. My wife will say is a different one, just because she, we were figuring out life changes, but at the same time, like, Indiana felt like the right professional move for us at the time. And I just finished my 5th season with the team. And it's been, the best 5 years of my life, of our lives. And, it's been exciting to kind of continue the journey going through.
I'm a big fan of the Pacers front office, and I think our fan base is too. Love some of the moves that you guys have been able to pull off overall. But how would you describe maybe the working relationship with, KP and Chad? Like, how do you feel that, like, you all fit as like a cohesive unit when it comes to getting the right deal done or anything of that sort?
Yeah, I think all of our skill sets kind of have are very complementary of each other, right? So when they brought me in, they told me, they're going to rely on me for all the, any kind of rule related kind of question. And I can rely on them for any team culture or kind of talent evaluation. And ultimately, we all have good skill sets. We all understand what our strengths are, but at the same time, we all complement each other so that we can ask questions with each other, bounce ideas off of each other. And then ultimately kind of come together to make the right decision. And I think that the most important part of that is there's no egos in any of our personalities. And I think that's extremely, extremely important when we're kind of, being asked to present ideas that others may not agree with, or ultimately kind of, lead to further discussion. And the fact that you can walk into the room and bring in any idea, and that it's going to be valued because we genuinely like each other and work with one another and are able to kind of have those types of discussions, is what makes our front office work very well. And it's not just me, Chad, and KP. It's our pro scouts, Ryan Carr, Vance Catlin, our analytics department with Spencer, and all of us in the front office being able to work with our coaching staff and being able to present those ideas with Coach Carlisle and his assistants. It's that type of unity that really brings the culture of the Pacers, to make the culture of the Pacers what it is. And that's been it's a seamless transition. That was one of those things that I was worried about when I first came to the team side, but being with that group has been eye-opening.
Yeah, I mean, can you just walk us through like what the collaboration looks like between the front office, coaching staff, and scouting department when making player decisions?
Yeah, like any big decision in life, I would say, like, you kind of come together, you bring in what the proposition is or what you're trying to do. Everybody understands what the common goal is, right? We're trying to build a winning team and a winning culture and people that fit together and like playing together. But ultimately, whether it's a signing or a trade and you're talking about a player, you present the pros and the cons. You present whether what his skill set is, what he can improve upon, what the intel is, what the medical is. You bring all of that to the table and you discuss it. And ultimately you land on, okay, is this a player that you're trying to pursue, or is this a player that probably doesn't fit the Pacers, culture and the team from a team perspective? And ultimately, when you kind of come together on certain players that this is what you want to do, then it's how do you execute and how do you get it done? And that then lands on, after you've gotten the feedback from coaching and analytics and scouts, then it's up to, Kevin, Chad, me to kind of come together to figure out, okay, what is this player worth? How much do you want to offer him? how do you negotiate a trade, or what's the value proposition of how much are you willing to put in on this type of trade to make this work. But a lot of it is just open discussion and communication, and and sometimes there's a lot of disagreement, right? And there's a lot of conversation that needs to be had and get over the hump. And then the top layer is then ultimately, discussion with ownership as well, right? So that's another layer to the entire thought process. But at the end of the day, it takes a lot of collaboration and communication, and if you can do it with people that really make going to work easy, then the rest of this is, it doesn't really feel like work. So
I've seen the Pacers front office get very crafty on some deals, work some good trade exceptions, find some good diamond in the rough type of trades. But is there a move when you look back on your time here, your 5+ years here, you go, you know what? I'm really proud of having my fingerprints on that move. You talked about collaboration. So yes, it's a team effort, but is there something that you think that you're like, you know what? I was the one that really spoke up on this, and I'm really proud of how it worked out.
No egos on this one. So like, I'll take, we're sharing in all the praise, and we share in all the failures as well. So there's nothing like that. But it's funny because my first trade with the team was a minor trade with OKC. I'll put that on the side. But my first big trade with the team was acquiring Caris LeVert, and that trade was eye-opening in a lot of ways because of what happened, as the aftermath of it. And I've seen many, many, many trades working at the league office, and I was going into that trade just thinking it was going to be a normal trade. It's player transactions. This is how it's going to affect the team on the court, what it's going to look like from an on-court perspective. And I remember going to the trade, and everybody's like, this is normal. Players have to do medicals. And I knew players have to do medicals, but I was never part of the team side of talking with our trainers, and then talking to our doctors, and then talking to how that stuff happens. And I'm waiting for the trainers to kind of give me the okay that things are fine and we can pass Caris on the trade. And they're saying, we just need another hour. We just need another hour. And I'm like, oh, I guess this is how it works from the team side. And then, when you kind of realize what's actually happening, and then how to unwind it, and then what happens and plays out afterwards, you realize that, okay, the team side, there's so much more of a human element of everything that goes in, working for the team. And that was just, again, I was on the job for a month working for the Pacers at the time. And I'll always remember, because it's one of those things that is such a, life moment. And, really, really glad that it kind of all played out the way it ended up playing out. But that just goes to remind you of kind of like, this is, basketball is a game at the end of the day, but there's so much more meaning to it, to people's lives here. So that was a really cool moment from a trade insight type of moment on my end.
That was a big deal.
Yeah,
that really was. I remember for Alex and I remember we were talking about that. It was like such breaking news to talk about. So it's cool to hear it from your side, because our podcast was in infancy stage before, but when that happened, I remember that was like such a huge deal. But I was doing some thinking. You're talking about the TJ Leaf deal with OKC, right? Yeah,
that was my first one. There you go.
Like, what is that deal? I was like,
who'd they get back, Facci? Do you remember?
But Jalen Q. Westbrook, they called him. That was his nickname on Basketball Reference. I remember. It was like, whoa, this is maybe Westbrook.
Bring back the trivia.
Yes, exactly. That's great.
So just to kind of go behind, past the fourth wall, I guess you could say, in terms of how trades work. You said that was your first trade. So are you, Chad and Kevin, constantly making your own separate calls to different GMs and assistant GMs across the league, or how does that normally work? I know like trade deadline, it's crazy, but are you guys all taking different calls and talking to different front offices?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all constantly have our own relationships and conversations with other teams throughout the year. I think from a more formal standpoint, I think there's a pecking order in terms of a way, I think, in terms of the way that our group operates. But in terms of just conversation across the league, working in an NBA front office, you need a pulse of the league, right? And however you're kind of figuring out that pulse, whether it's through your own relationships with other team people, other coaches, other agents, whatever intel you can gather, I think is a benefit to the operation as a whole. And then you kind of follow these leads, and you kind of follow how to pursue the goals that you're trying to accomplish. And then you kind of land it at a certain point. And again, it's not really me, Chad, and Kevin to ultimately decide. Like, you still need ownership approval. You still need the other team's ownership approval. You need to kind of get everybody on the same page at the end of the day. But yeah, that's like a little bit of an insight into how the operation works there.
What's it like kind of staying up to date on like the CBA, knowing it in and out to make sure that everything is aligned, appropriately? Like, we've seen teams like the Knicks, like nickel and dime this, and this guy takes just a tiny bit less than this, and it feels like they're pinching pennies at one point. But that's what the ins and outs are of the CBA. So like, what's it like for you? Is it like almost like studying for like a final exam type of thing, where like you got to have this memorized, in and out to make sure that every single loophole that's available?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, you go back to like, what's the collaboration between me, Chad, KP? I was listening to your podcast with Young Simba the other day, and you just coming up with trades. And then in the back of my mind, I'm just like thinking of the reasons why you can't do it, or like what the cap ramifications are, or like how that affects. And we'll be sitting in our front office room, and Chad would throw out a trade, and I'd be like, nope, can't do that one because of this, or and Kevin would throw this. So they always look at me as like the one who says no to a lot of things. Once in a while, I'll be able to bring something out, but that's kind of how it works. And you have to know these things, in order to kind of get things done and kind of move things forward. Because if you try to propose something that just doesn't work, then as much as you're trying to push it through, the league's going to say no to it. So yes, you have to be on top of it. The benefit of working in the league office and seeing it and seeing how these rules came about allow me to then transfer those skill sets to now just the Pacers themselves and our team specifics, and being able to grow on there. But the new CBA has caused a lot of additional complexities, and you got to be aware of what's happening. And I'm not a one-man team. I have we're building out our group, and I'm able to now bounce ideas off of with many people, and it's important to kind of continue to make sure that we understand exactly what the ramifications are, so that every type of transaction that we're doing, we're going in with our eyes wide open of, okay, if we do this, how is that going to affect us in the future? Or how is that going to affect us this season? And is it worth it? And if you're not on top of that, then you might do something that just causes you irreparable harm down the line. So.
Well, let me ask you this, just to follow up, since you said you listened to the Young Simba podcast with us. I have to know if I'm not going to go where you think I'm going. If we were to send you our trades before we come to the podcast, could you at least confirm or deny if those would work or not before we just bring them to the table?
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I'll try to pre-screen those before we bring them to the table. And then number two, do you hate our trade ideas as much as the fans do?
I'll just say this, at a high level, trades are very complex, but I would say if there's a will, there's a way on a lot of these things. It's not the exact trade that probably you want to kind of get through, but a little bit of tinkering here or there, and you could find a way. That's not the case for everything, and it has gotten a lot harder, especially with these apron rules and the trade restrictions that some of high spending teams are now faced with. But like you said, Facci, about the Knicks, kind of figuring out these little small intricacies and ways to kind of make sure that every dollar counts. There are still ways to be able to do that, and it's part of our job to make sure that we are constantly aware in doing that, and making sure that we're not in a position where $1 kind of causes millions of dollars of pain. So, that's something that we're constantly thinking about.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think with now that the CBA has kind of changed, it's been a couple years now, but like you're starting to see that teams that were in the second apron are now starting to make some trades to undo that. We've seen Boston shed like $250 million this year, and Phoenix has done a lot of the same things. Do you think maybe it's kind of evening out the playing ground a little bit compared from like the big market teams to some of the so-called smaller market teams? Because we just saw Pacers versus OKC in the NBA Finals, and we also saw some of the other teams, like for instance, like a Phoenix that felt pretty handicapped all year, hard to make trades, hard to sign, guys that were bought out, anything of that sort. So, do you think it's sort of evening out the playing field a little bit because teams don't want to be that second apron team for more than a season?
For sure, and I think that was a lot of the intention of what this new CBA, the new rules of this new CBA were trying to prevent. And I think if the league had its way, a true hard cap is something that they would definitely entertain. But at the same time, it's a negotiation, and players are very, very against that part. So this is a middle ground of it. But if you look across the league, I think there's 23 to 25 teams that are at one of the levels hard cap. So you're talking about it, almost every team across the league is faced with a hard cap, whether it's the first apron or the second apron. And I think anything that you can do to kind of even the playing field across all 30 teams is a benefit to the league, and something that you're starting to really see the effects of. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how all 30 teams navigate this new world. You're starting to see it already. Like you said, a lot of teams are trying to kind of position themselves so that they don't face kind of these second apron penalties. It used to be a world where it was just straight spending, right? Like if you had the money to do it, why wouldn't you go ahead and acquire the top talent? But now it's not just about the money. It's about these team building tools that you no longer have, primarily these trade restrictions that make it hard to kind of come up with these trade ideas. But the other one is this frozen pick rule, and the fact that you can't trade your picks either if you're above the second apron. So there's just these complexities that go into it that you have to be aware of. But I'm always a believer the more even that you can make things, the more opportunity and kind of ability for all teams to understand exactly what they're faced with so that they can game plan and execute from there.
About 3 years ago, there was a handful of us that got to have a luncheon with you in the front office, and we got to ask you guys a lot of questions. And one of the questions that was brought to the table is, how do you know what type of player to bring into your culture? Because there are players that could be extremely talented, but they might not fit the culture of what you're trying to build. How important is it when you're evaluating players to trade for, looking at that culture versus overall talent? How do you weigh that when you're making that decision?
Yeah. I mean, I think you've seen the culture that we've been building over these last 2 years and how critical it is to our team's success. We think we're very, very talented to begin with, but the culture piece of it is what allows it to cultivate and even foster an even greater environment. We are definitely a team that is kind of greater than the sum of its parts, right? It's like one of those things where we just know that the depth and the camaraderie that we have and the ability to want to play with one another and have the culture that we've currently instilled has allowed us to be as successful as we have been over the last couple of seasons. I guess the thing that I'd mention though is that even if you think you have the best culture in the league, or you're currently building that environment and you make that a primary focus, I think anything that kind of disrupts that is a wild card. It's something that you can't fully predict. So even if you bring in the best cultured people to the team, like how does 15 or 18 players mesh together? How does that culture, jibe with the coaching staff, like how does all of that come together, is still kind of like a mystery pot. It's our job to make sure that any type of like distraction or anything gets handled, and we can continue to do that. But it's not one person's like, it's not in one person's control to do that at the end of the day. It's still something that you need to continue to foster and continue to make sure that culture is at the forefront so that everybody understands it. So I would say it's a really, really big part to what we're trying to build. At the same time, talent still is what is king on the court, right? So you need the talent, but you also need the culture.
Hard line of tiptoe. I think Indiana's done a great job the last 2 seasons winning with the right culture. So we know how close they were to an NBA championship. So hey, stay the course. But for right now, I think that the Pacers, they're below the tax. They have wiggle room there. Then you also when Chad came on our show, mentioned that the Pacers applied for the disabled player exception, got approval. How much, I'm not sure off the top of my head where that leaves them in terms of, wiggle room, salary cap wise, but how much does, Indiana value that optionality where they could potentially swing a deal and have, room to acquire a player or use that salary cap any way that they wanted to?
Yeah. Like I said a little bit earlier, it's just another tool in our toolbox. Acquiring the disabled player exception doesn't really preclude us from anything really. It just means that there's a more likely than not, chance that Tyrese is going to be out for the season. If he were to somehow come back, that applying for it doesn't mean that he can't come back. So this gives us another exception to use when we kind of think about, trades, signings, whatever we like to do. Likelihood of using it, there's still some restrictions in terms of has to be a player on an expiring deal, or it can only be a one year contract. The amount is up to $14 million, so it's something that can go a long way. But in terms of just plans to use it, we'll kind of see what opportunities come to us, and we'll evaluate it from there. Like Chad said, we're not afraid to go into the tax, but we need to be convinced that it's the right opportunity and the right type of player, and something that we weigh the pros and cons of things like that. And that's where we are right now. It's the beauty of having the flexibility and the optionality that we currently have. And we'll make sure to get the most value out of it.
I know training camp is just around the corner here in the next month or so, but do you guys have any plans to bring any additional players on Exhibit 10 contracts?
Yeah, I think that's something that we're still navigating and going through. We had some players on our summer league team that are kind of scheduled to head over to the Noblesville Boom this coming season. We're still evaluating kind of our training camp roster, and if we're going to bring in any other players to participate in camp. It's going to be an interesting kind of camp because we have Ty already out, and then you have 2 centers, kind of rehabbing their injuries. So it's just making sure that we have the bodies to even go through the training camp to begin with. But yeah, I think going forward, it's something that we'll continue to look at and see who the best Exhibit 10 or even just training camp contracts that we like to bring in.
Can you elaborate a little bit about maybe what goes into like some of the strategy of leveraging when to dress two-way players? Obviously, they have a limit. They can't play more than 50 NBA games. You get 3 two-way players. You want to be able to make sure that every player doesn't exceed or meet their not exceed, but meet their 50-game limit too early on. So is there a sort of strategy that you guys discuss on how to go about that?
Yeah. I mean, you hit it on the head, right? Like there's a limit to how many games a two-way player can dress. So you want to be mindful of, will you run into any issues by the end of the year? Last year, we kind of got forced in the beginning of the season with the number of injuries that we had, where you kind of almost had to dress all of our two-way guys in the very beginning. And then in the end, we kind of just started to look at the schedule, see kind of when we were able to bring in some of our two-way players. At the same time, you want our two-way players to be playing meaningful minutes and continuing their development, right? So if the G League team is on the road for a long road trip, but the Pacers have a don't have a need for that body. You'd rather them be with the G League team so that they can kind of get their reps in and continue to work and kind of play meaningful minutes with the G League team. So yeah, you kind of look at the schedule, you kind of see what the NBA team's needs are, and then you start looking at how many games are left to bring them in. But I think this year is going to be a great test to that, right? With where we're at, and we value all three of our two-way guys. There's a little bit of kind of guard mix into it, so it's going to be interesting to see, okay, do you need to dress all three of them for a certain game? Do you rather kind of, okay, give this Ray J a chance today, Quentin a chance tomorrow, and then kind of see when Taylor can kind of fit into the mix. But yeah, you kind of, like you said, but we'll talk with our coaches about the scheduling. We'll kind of see what their needs are. We'll see what injuries kind of pop up throughout the year, and we'll kind of go from there.
Do you guys feel pretty confident in your point guard depth on the roster right now, or do you still want to maybe address getting a third string point guard that's a little bit more established than some of your two-way guys potentially?
Yeah, it's on the table, and we're having constant conversation with our coaches about that. I think so much of the success of last year was having multiple ball handlers on the court at the same time, right? So it's a style of play kind of discussion and how we want to kind of make that worth it, how to make it work. And we're also confident in the Cam Jones, who we just drafted. We really like the skill set that Ray J and Quentin bring as two-way players too. Can they bring enough, and can they get enough consistent run with the team to alleviate the concern of having another type of point guard on the team? We currently have 15 rostered players on the team, if you count Tony currently. So it's a decision that we need to make in order to make those moves. So it's on the table. It's not just that position, it's everything, right? We're constantly just trying to figure out ways to improve this team and get better. So yeah.
Not just on the court, but off the court, there's a little bit of veteran leadership that might be missing from this group. Obviously Halliburton, I don't know what his traveling schedule is going to be like early on. He who shall not be named with the green grass is gone. But
number 3 in Milwaukee.
And then there's James Johnson. I've seen him pop up around training camp before. Never say never, but obviously as of now, not on the roster. Who do you view as maybe some of the guys that could step up and be veteran leaders as this team goes, from being in an NBA Finals to a little bit of a, let's try and figure this out period?
Yeah, I mean, I think when the moment we acquired Pascal, he stepped into a leadership role with the team, and that voice and championship pedigree is going to be even more prominent. Not that it hasn't been, but I think he's the natural kind of next step in terms of just kind of growing and continuing on what he's doing there. I think a lot of people are expecting Andrew to kind of build a bigger voice. He has the kind of quiet leadership personality trait that a lot of our players look up to. But being kind of the primary ball handler, being kind of our currently slotted point guard, starting point guard, a lot of natural abilities there. And then TJ is going to be one of those in the locker room that just constantly uplifts everybody on the team. So I think it's going to be opportunities for others across the team to step into new roles, whether it's a leadership role or just type of their on-court fit. And this is going to be an interesting year to see how everybody is able to adapt to that and figure out what works best for them, because we're going into a season where there are changes. But if you look at these changes as something that will provide opportunity and excitement for this next season, you can really take that with a different light and allow others to shine.
When Chad was on this podcast a couple of weeks ago, he mentioned that the shooting guard position would be a training camp battle. And then just last week, Coach Carlisle said that Mathurin would be the projected starter and it'd be his job to lose. What do you guys want to see from Mathurin to kind of secure that starting 2 spot during training camp?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the discussion about Benedict has been ongoing for so long, and I think like everybody understands exactly what Ben is able to bring to the table. He is determined, the most competitive on the team, the most determined on the team. He works extremely, extremely hard at his craft. The talent level is all there. Um, but the conversation goes about, okay, how's the full fit, and how does he kind of adapt to the playing style that our coaching staff likes? And he's done a really, really good job of working his way towards the middle, and balancing his extreme talent and his what works for his skill set with our playing style, and what works with our coaching staff and what they're looking for. And he's worked his way towards kind of adapting and adjusting and figuring that part out. And I think it's just continuing that progression to fit how this next iteration of the team is going to look, in the 25-26 season. And I guess we don't fully know how that's going to look, because like I said, it's going to be a little bit different. So just making sure that when he is there, that he, is able to grasp that starting spot and continue to play the way the coaches need him to play, because the talent level, as we've all talked about, is astronomical. It's just how can he continue to get that stranglehold on that starting position and continue to improve there.
Can you talk to us a little bit about, obviously the center rotation, centers by committee, is the perfect like label of the summer of what we have going on. Hey, we see who's going to rise to the top. That we have a good group of guys that are very capable of taking big steps forward. But can you talk to us a little bit about what went into the process of targeting Jay Huff? I felt like, obviously someone that Chad mentioned, you guys had done your research on him for a while. I felt like the contract was perfect. I could be wrong. Did it fit into a trade exception that the Pacers had previously acquired? Was it through the James Wiseman trade?
Yeah. Yep.
I thought that was chess right there. So can you pull back the curtain a little bit and just tell us like what went into that? Because we're talking about to set the stage here. You traded James Wiseman for a trade exception. You used a trade exception to bring Jay Huff in, and you brought James Wiseman back. I just feel like that is like a chef's kiss of a great move. But talk to us a little bit about what maybe went into that whole process.
Yeah, I mean, from a trade exception, and sometimes the numbers just work the way they work out, and that was one of those that, okay, when you do certain transactions, you kind of identify what may or may not be available in the future, and Jay Huff fit perfectly into the Wiseman exception. So it was easy. If we didn't have the exception, there's still other ways to have acquired Jay. So I wouldn't say that it was something that was some extreme master class of
was nice,
but it works out pretty well. And it's another benefit of when you analyze the trade, it's something that we had available to us. But Jay is somebody from a skill set wise, from what we're trying to do, fits into a lot of those boxes. He is somebody that hasn't had full opportunity and a full kind of long leash in a lot of places, but you start to see a lot of progress in terms of what he was able to do last season in Memphis, and it was something that kind of started to catch our eye. And when the opportunity came for us to look to acquire a center, you kind of evaluate what it'll cost to kind of to bring him to Indiana, and what Memphis was trying to do, and it worked out for both sides at that point. It's one of those things that we'll see what next season is able to bring, but we know he's an extremely hard worker. He fits, like we said, he fits our team culture when you identify that side of things. And contractually, it's something that is very, very favorable too. So when you kind of like analyze all of that, you put that on the table, like you talked about earlier. You talk to the coaches, you talk to the scouts, you talk to analytics. We try to see what the other team is looking for at the end of the day. And we're able to make a deal to come together there for Jay. So we're excited for what he's able to bring. It's definitely a different element to what Isaiah Jackson in terms of his skill set is, but they are very, very complementary of each other, and we're excited to see them kind of battle it out in camp. You add in James Wiseman to the mix as he's recovering too. and we'll see what the training camp battle will look like at the center position.
It's going to be fun to see, and I think we're all looking forward to that, as that feels like that's the true battle position-wise to see who will be the starter. And there's been a lot of debate from fans and ourselves here on who will get that. But if you're ready for it, we're going to jump into our rapid fire here. So just quick hitters, don't have to do long answers to kind of fill podcast time, but just first thing that comes to mind or whatever. So start things off here. Number one, first NBA game that you ever attended.
Oof. It's definitely the New Jersey Nets somewhere, because that's where I was born, but I can't remember exactly who it was. It's probably New Jersey Nets, maybe a Boston Celtics game.
Okay.
Was that in the Prudential Center?
The Meadowlands, probably.
Meadowlands, nice. Okay, yeah, I used to follow them, Newark and Prudential.
Yeah, and it was before they even moved to Newark, so it was
cheap tickets back then.
Exactly. Yeah.
Number two on our list: favorite Pacers jersey design of all time. What do you got?
I like the city editions that we've had, and I can't really decide whether it's the white or the black, but I love kind of that vibe, and we've had so many memorable games in those jerseys
that we have.
I hate that they're going away this year. It's a really big bummer. I know a lot of fans have merch of that too. So, all right, this is a fun one. What is one current Pacers player that you would trust to cook you dinner?
Ooh, dinner. Wow. Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm just gonna go Benedict, because I know his baking skills are there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hope that those carry over to the dinner portion of things.
And that's what I was wondering. I'm like, I know he could bake, but does that transfer to dinner, or is it just like?
Well, as you know that he'll be capable in the kitchen, and I can't say that about some of the other guys on the team. So we'll have that going for him.
I think that's a very fair answer. So next question. If you weren't working in basketball, what would you be doing? Because you talked about, you did the big four, accounting wasn't really for you. I don't blame you. I've had many friends back out of, working at PwC and all that. What would you be doing?
Man, that's probably what I'd still be doing. Honestly, it's not the career path that I would love, but it's probably what the honest truth of where my life would be right now.
Well, thank God for basketball then. So next one, favorite road city to visit during the NBA season?
I got to go with New York. Just that's where I'm from originally. And that's go back to New York, and I'm going to have a lot of people kind of come out there. So
gotcha.
Always fun time there.
Just don't say Milwaukee. That's all. Coffee order on game day. Do you have something, you have a go-to or anything of the sort?
Yep. Iced coffee. That's every day, but it's maybe 2 times on a game day.
What kind of iced coffee are we going with though? Like, is it just straight iced coffee, or do you add anything to it? Or
sometimes I'll add a shot of espresso to the iced coffee. I usually go Starbucks or just wherever I can, wherever it hits up on the road.
Yeah, I'm a nitro cold brew. Black iced coffee. I've ditched the cream and sugar a long time ago.
I'm the same way. Yep.
Respect it.
I respect you guys for having the willpower to do that. I can't drink my coffee without a little sweetness in it.
Grow up. You'll get over it one day.
Well, when I have 2 kids, I might have to do that. Next question. One player from any era that you wish you could have seen in a Pacers uniform.
Oh, any era. That's a tough one. Well, my favorite player growing up was Steve Francis. So that was one of those things that he was that's his highlight dunks, and just the ability for him to get up was something that always excited me. So I'll go with him for now.
That's definitely an off the wall answer. I like it.
Yeah. I didn't know where you were going to go. Steve Francis does not get enough love in 2025. I will say that. People forget that man was really good in his
Let's just say less Gilbert Arenas, more Steve Francis.
Yep. All right, your go-to hype song before a big day, we'll say at work. It might not be a big game, but say, say it's going to be, all right, this is big. This is the trade deadline. It's going down today. We got to make it work. What are you listening to?
Oh, man. He hasn't come up with anything new recently, but Chance the Rapper is
I've heard his name in a while. A couple years ago, he was the guy. Yeah.
Okay. I was listening to an old episode of an episode me and Facci did with our friend Cammy, post-game recap after the Pacers beat the Wizards this year, because I just wanted to hear Facci and Cammy's interactions, and Cammy dropped a Kendrick reference, and Facci was to respond next, and Facci had like a 5-second pause and goes, So anyway, back to the game. 'Cause it just,
A lot of my music is outdated. You know, I'm like the 90s, early 2000s type of guy. So show my age a little bit.
if it makes you feel any better, I watched Freakier Friday on Saturday, and they made a reference to being old if you like John Mayer and Coldplay, which I like quite a bit. So I felt very old.
Twice. It's great. He's honestly a great concert.
But anyway, next question. We only have 2 more left, so make this one quick. What do you think is the most underrated skill in basketball today?
Ooh, underrated skill. I don't know if it's underrated anymore, but basketball IQ is probably, you know, something that is coming up top of mind for so many across the league now. You have to be able to have your feel and understand what's happening around you because of, you know, how quick things are moving and the ability to process. So I'll go with that.
I like that. You could alter a game with the right IQ, and I think it's definitely an underrated stats. I think an underrated skill. I think it's good. All right, we'll never know, but Pacers win Game 7 of the finals. What were you doing first thing the next day?
I don't know. I mean, I think just holding my boys and holding the trophy probably is one of those things that, you know, you want to do it with the people that you love, and that is one of those things that you know, you spend it with family, enjoy the moment, and you'll kind of relive those moments forever.
I guess maybe a quick follow up on that. What did you do when they won Game 6? Because it's a great moment where you're going to the NBA Finals. Did you get to have that moment with your family?
You're talking about Eastern Conference Finals?
Eastern Conference Finals?
Yes. That's what I meant. Yes,
exactly. Yes. Yeah. So they were able to come down the court with me, and we, you know, had the pictures. My 4-year-old was in the back locker room. He was looking at the champagne bottles. We have a picture of him, you know, holding one of those. It's you know, and it's one of those things that you'll always remember. And you kind of wish you had opportunity to do it again, to bring them to the parade. But you know, that's coming soon. We'll get there eventually, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that question. I mean, when you get to a Game 7 in the NBA Finals, how much, like, you can say, oh man, I'm so devastated we lost, right? But how much more does it push you to want to get back there as well?
That's one of those things. I mean, this is a year of what ifs at that point, right? And it's when you've got to experience all of those highs and then the ultimate low, you realize this is, you know, how, you know, what you live for in the industry that we're in. It's one of those things that at the league office I would never have been able to experience. It's something that you think about it, but you know, this is why I wanted to be at a team, that to be able to have my fingerprints on building a team to reach that ultimate goal, and to be able to accomplish that and bring, you know, a championship to Indiana for our ownership, for our fans, you know, for all of our staff and everybody that's, you know, constantly has this, you know, all the hard work that we've been able to bring. It's you know, you kind of continue to push even harder to reach that goal, and we'll continue to strive for that. And you know, I know that we'll be able to get there at some point.
My last question for you is, how much have you seen this franchise change since the trade to bring in Tyrese Halliburton? Like from pre-Halliburton to like post of just this team kind of taking off. And like we said before, you know, it's not just a one-man thing and all that, but like how much have you seen of a difference from you know, after that transaction?
I mean, that one changed so much of what where we are as a team and as a whole. It allowed us to play completely different style. It allowed us to bring, you know, a leader to the team that, you know, so many people want to play with, that you know, his joy and, you know, his love for the game, you know, kind of shifted so much of the dynamic. And when you have, you know, a lead point guard like that you know, that you can trust, and, you know, you want to acquire other players that will kind of fit that style, it just makes that so much easier, right? When you have the head of your snake, you know, answered, then everything else starts falling into place. And that allowed us to then figure out what are the best pieces to fit around him, and how to build out this team. Like you said, from a culture standpoint and from a style of play standpoint, that just made the engine go. So that trade started this new era of the team, and we're excited to kind of continue it through, because we think we have a really, really bright future with the core that we have in place. to set us up.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for our conversation today. That is the assistant general manager of the Indiana Pacers, Ted Wu. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that conversation with Ted. And if you're not already, make sure you guys, if you see him at the arena, say hi, let him know you heard him on Setting the Pace. I'm sure he'll get a kick out of that. But Ted, we do appreciate your time, and I do apologize for putting you through all those horrific trade ideas that Facci, myself, and young Simba came up with. But, thank you for not completely bashing us on this podcast. So we do appreciate your time, and hopefully you enjoy the rest of your off season before the season starts up here in just a little bit.
Have a great summer, guys.
Appreciate you, Ted.
Good work.
Talk soon.
We keep scoring, we don't need to stop. New episodes, weekly drops. This your number one podcast. Sweeping every team, we gon' need a mop. Setting the pace with Alex and Facci. Alex and Facci. Alex and Alex. Setting the pace with Alex and Facci. Alex and Facci. Alex and Alex. Setting the pace with Alex and Facci. Alex and Facci. Alex and Alex. Setting the pace with Alex and Facci. Alex and Facci. Alex and Alex.